This week we're going to be talking about organization as culture and social structure. Big picture this week, we really want to explore and understand how various dimensions of organizational social structure interrelate and affect organizational effectiveness. According to Hatch, the idea is that groups outperform individuals and that pooling efforts amplify results. Organizations aren't looking for a Superman or Superwoman. What they truly are looking for are teams of individuals that come together. So social structure theory, in general, its goal is to find the best way forward. And a starting point for social structure theory comes from the work of Max Weber. His view of an ideal bureaucracy included the fundamentals we've looked at previously, a fixed division of labor all the way to a set of general rules governing the performance of offices, strict discipline and control, and the conduct of the office is expected. He was a structuralist. He was a centralist. He was somebody who believed that an ideal bureaucracy was highly regulated, highly structured. He believed in the division of labor, the distribution of work responsibilities and tasks within an organization. What will be interesting as we get through this lecture and you read through the material is the view of Burns and Stalker in relation to the work of Weber and how today's organizations might be viewed differently based on the changing environment that we're experiencing compared to Weber. His environment was one turn of the century, 20th century, industrialization, not nearly the technology and service economy we're in today. And I think just in looking at the differences in views between Burns and Stalker and Weber, we see how context and the shifting of context, environment, economy has dramatic effects on how organization is structured. Brings forward the idea of formalization. In Weber's view, high formalization is necessary. Low employee discretion, increased managerial control, strict observance of positional authority. The other end of the scale, of course, in formalization is low formalization, where greater employee discretion is employed, there's flexibility and spontaneity. Proposes the idea of differentiation, the process by which organizations allocate people and resources to tasks and establish relationships in order to achieve goals. We look at vertical and horizontal differentiation. Vertical, the number of levels in the hierarchy, and reporting relationships. In horizontal, departmentation, the way tasks are grouped into functions and competencies, includes a span of control and the number of employees reporting to a manager. Tall organizations are conical. They are narrow at the bottom and sharp at the top. Flat are very horizontal with low vertical differentiation. They are short and wide. Differentiation and integration. As an organization grows, it differentiates to meet the more varied demands of its now larger environment and its own internal complexity. Not unusual, it's a statement of the obvious. In order to keep its differentiated activities aligned to its strategy, integration is required. In other words, we have to connect the various parts that have been added as the organization grows. Further differentiation, i.e. adding layers of management, leads to the need for further integration. More coordinated mechanisms. A great example is an arrow within an arrow. If you consider the blue arrow the organization, the white, smaller arrows within it represent either people or departments in their overall direction internally and their push or pull within the organization in relation to the overall direction the organization is headed. Smart organizations find integration. They get departments within the larger organization lined up. Higher alignment suggests the organization has a higher probability to pool and concentrate its resources in achieving its objectives. In my own view, I think a great organization looks something more like this, where not only do you have alignment where integration has been met, but you have quite a bit of differentiation in the orientation and culture and human resource diversity within each unit in the organization. We don't want organizations to be completely generic. We want them to be diverse. But in and amongst the diversity within an organization, you do want all of your units pulling in the same direction in their own unique and differentiated way. Hatch also shows us commonly used dimensions of organizational social structure, and what she presents is a list of 7 perspectives on social structure or dimensions: administrative, differentiation, integration, we've talked about, centralization, standardization, formalization, and specialization. She provides an example of a flat organizational structure. She provides a tall one. And I'd like to share a few examples that I've looked at over the years. Proposing organizational structure is something I've done repeatedly in both small and large organizations. Here's one from 2009, Bryant University. And if you were to guess what this form is, I guess we could suggest it is a much more vertical organization. You have Ron Makeley as president, and then below Ron you have all of his senior administrative team listed. It doesn't look like this today, it's changed, but it's a great example of a vertical organization. Here's another that might be more familiar, Northeastern, a much larger organization compared to Bryant University, and a much more complex organization. And I like the view to the far left, which is the provost's office. It is so large that it goes vertical on the far left side through 5 departments to a 6th, and then all of the divisions academically go left to right. So this is both vertical and horizontal. Here's an example of one that I was leading, shaded my role, Vice President and Dean, on the left. And you can see within my own organization that it was quite vertical in its orientation, and the structure within it was such that there was more than 2 layers between me and much of the reporting structure due to the size of the organization and complexity. So comparing mechanistic and organic organizations, if you looked at the org charts I've just shown you, they could be perceived as mechanistic. High horizontal and vertical differentiation, high formalization. All of the ones that I showed you included deep centralization, goals for standardization, close supervision, and vertical communication. But there's another perspective, and it's the focus of our discussion today, and that is organic structures. Structures that focus on the organic or cultural aspect, the social aspect of organization. Organic structures have high horizontal and vertical integration and low formalization. They're decentralized. They involve mutual adjustment. They rely on personal expertise and creativity with minimal supervision. Organizational social structure in the environment. The environment, as we've said before, has a dramatic impact on the organization and its social structure. Stable environments often result in lower differentiation, high integration, centralization, and hierarchy. A formal, centralized organization only prospers when the environment it's within is stable. An unstable environment yields higher differentiation, high integration with direct communication and decentralization. Unstable environments require that small groups of employees and individuals are capable of making decisions and driving results without too much formalization and too much hierarchy. I'd also like to review the model presented by Katz and Kahn. If you recall, last week we looked at organization that included inputs, transformation, and outputs. Katz and Kahn proposes inputs passing through a technical core that leads to outputs, but they add some layers. They add a layer of support to ensure the technical core has its needed inputs. So inputs would include a function that supports the overall objective called purchasing, for example, that then passes into the technical core, and then another vehicle of support on the outbound side, sales, which enhances the technical core's ability to produce outputs, sales therefore allowing outputs to occur more effectively. And then another layer is added called maintenance. This includes accounting, personnel, and facilities. Maintenance offers support to the overall organization so it functions correctly, and maintenance as a function often floats on a foundation of stability, centrality, a much more mechanistic view. But then we have adaptation. This includes executive decision-making, strategic planning, research and development, communications and public relations. And so this view from Katz and Kahn includes an input-output model with supporting functions on either end of the technical core, purchasing and sales, and a mechanistic or centralized function at the bottom called maintenance, and a flexible, more socially oriented function at the top called adaptation. And so if you consider the model, what Katz and Kahn suggests is that organizations are hybrids. They're highly structured in some areas and decentralized in others. and that you need a mixture of the two for an organization to function effectively. And I think of all the models we've looked at, Katz and Kahn come closest to what I see in business and community today. In Hatch's book, she provides a clean and final model of the Katz and Kahn perspective, and here it is for you to look at. Morgan also complements the work that Hatch has presented. He asks the question, what is culture? Culture is the pattern of development reflected in a society's system of knowledge, ideology, values, laws, and day-to-day ritual. Morgan proposes that we explore the idea that organization is itself a cultural phenomenon that varies according to a society's stage of development. Now, if you think about this for a minute, if Morgan's proposing that the idea of organization varies according to a society's stage of development, it makes sense then that Weber's view at the turn of the century that organizations were mechanistic would in fact make sense in the industrialized Western cultures that he was viewing, because that was the stage of development they were in. Today, in our technology-oriented, service-oriented societies in the West, and more importantly emerging in Asia, the whole model has shifted to one that is much more social than ever. Morgan also proposes that culture varies from one society to another and how this causes cross-national variation in organizations. And I think this is an accurate view. If any of you have sold or done business in China or Asia or even parts of Europe, you'll notice that the cultural variation from one society to another dramatically impacts how we do business. In talking about culture, then, we are really talking about a process of reality construction that allows people to see and understand particular events and actions, objects, utterances, or situations in different ways. Organization, then, is the enactment of a shared reality. What are the shared frames of reference that make organization possible? Where do they come from, and how are they created, communicated, and sustained? So if you think about shared frames of references, one good model or chart to look at is this one presented by Broadview Networks. It was published last summer in the Huffington Post. And this map shows the biggest organizations by dollar revenue in each of the 50 United States. What's important to note is that if Morgan is correct, these organizations have become informed by and have adjusted to both the states they're operating within from a cultural perspective and also the country and global environment that they operate within as well. Corporations then attract talent that fit their overall culture. Their culture is influenced by the states they operate within. And according to Morgan, in talking about culture, we're really talking about reality construction. The individuals that enter organizations bring forth and then create a reality. They bring forth a perception of reality and therefore create a reality that then resonates from that organization out to the communities that it operates within, and then nationally and globally. So that's the end of this week's overview.